I don't know what the fuck these people are thinking. YouTube has been, crushing the nuts of the conservatives and the people who are center and center-right. And they're going to other platforms, thus taking eyeballs away from them. Twitter is doing the same thing, and now we have Gab, which is taking more eyeballs away from Twitter. These platforms are shooting themselves in the fucking foot, and I cannot believe, if they are publicly traded companies, that these decisions that they're making, are they cleared by the board and the stockholders? Because if they're not, and they're causing it to lose eyeballs and lose money, and the stock price goes down, that's a fucking lawsuit. Plain and simple. Same thing goes for Google. When YouTube fucking, if enough people pull out of YouTube and it severely affects their bottom line, and then all of a sudden they're crying about, oh shit, it's going under, and Google stock price comes down, it's a fucking lawsuit. Especially if they made decisions and they did things that were not, cleared by the fucking stockholders. Because the people who run Google don't own Google. If it's a publicly traded company, that means the public owns it. All right, gentlemen, Terrence Popp here with another episode live from the Lair. Okay, where we left off before, we got into country. The AAR, hit, and then everybody went fucking crazy. We're going to start off basically where, that way I left off last time. So basically, the AAR hits, we get put on a standstill or stand down until we get caught up on, the shooting of the weapons and all the other horse shit that we're supposed to get done. And, some of the 60s, or most of the 60s, were turned into the cube, actually at Victory, and nothing was really done because they didn't have parts for 60s. We never should have been sent into country with 60s because they should have technically been swapped out years before this, bottom line. In fact, the 60s that we did have that worked, we literally had people coming from Victory and some of the other fobs within 20 miles of us to come look at them because there's some sentimental value there, I guess. People were like wanted to finger fuck them and like, oh, I haven't seen one of these in years. I love the 60. Don't get me wrong, I love the 62, but it is what it is. In fact, I don't like the the 240 mainly because it's not made in the United States. It's a little heavier than the 60, and if it, I'm a firm believer, if it's not broken, why the fuck do you need to fix it? All right. So, shortly thereafter, the Department of Defense sent an 06, it's a full bird colonel, to fly into fucking Iraq, come to Abu Ghraib prison, and actually interview me. All right. Now, technically, when something like this goes down, your chain of command is supposed to be there. Your commander, your first sergeant, and at a minimum are supposed to be there. So I get sent up there to this meeting. There's the colonel, then he has two individuals from the JAG Corps, because they're basically going to fucking fry my ass for this. Because I jumped over all these fucking hoops and involved the SecDef directly. Everyone was pissed off. And my Commander Worthless and his fucking lapdog Charlie Brown didn't lift a finger, said, basically, fuck you, you deserve what you get. So I'm like, okay, cool. So I walk up there, and the first half is like basically, it's like basically getting a guilt session from a full-blood colonel about how I fucking didn't do this right, and I didn't do that right, and I was supposed to follow this chain of command, and and I basically looked at this colonel in the face and I said, look, I don't know where this chain of command is because the commander that I have is absolutely worthless. In fact, that is what all the men call him. he falsified training records to get us here directly. I don't know how the fuck we jumped over Kuwait, because that's horseshit. And if you think I had anything to do with that, you're out of your goddamn mind, sir. Of course, you can say all kinds of fucked up shit to officers as long as you start it and end it with sir. You'd be surprised. Now, some of them get pretty upset. There's really nothing they can do about it. So we take a break. You know, I think I was in there from like 10 o'clock to 11:30. They let me out for lunch. You know, I went out and got some lunch. And I remember I talked to a couple of guys from the unit, told them I was going to get crucified for the whole fucking deal. So I go to chow. I come back, and literally I'm sitting in there, and the fucking the crucifying is going to severely, start again. And, I have nobody in my corner, it's just me against all the, they're basically setting me up to fucking get hammered. And lo and behold, behind me, the 11 NCOs who contributed to the unofficial after-action report walk through the door, look at the colonel, and say, "We assisted in writing this after-action report, and Master Sergeant Popp only put his name at the end and a few finishing touches at the end so it would get the attention that it needed. But we wrote it, and we will fill out sworn statements that this all really happened. It's all fucking true. Nothing was made up. Maybe it was a little inappropriate, but we have broken weapons. We don't have any radios that talk to anybody in country. Nobody's qualified on any of the fucking weapons as per standard, and we've only done about 15% ammo firing of what is required on the STRAC manual. That is the truth." Well, granted, you can yell at a guy for jumping over the chain of command, but rarely are you ever going to get court-martialed just for that, And after the dudes came in and basically said, "Hey, this really fucking happened. This is all fucked up, and we're willing to put our names on paper, and we'll fucking fight this to the nines." That pretty much shut down the whole fucking thing. I remember, the two JAG guys were talking, blah, 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 and then they told the colonel, and 3 or 4 minutes later, "All right, this is over." They shut their book, and they left. I never saw them again, never heard anything about it, except when I got a nasty gram in my AKO email from the Sergeant Major of the Army. I believe his name was Preston at the time. In my opinion, I didn't really like the man. He seemed like a brown noser. I don't believe he came from a combat MOS background. I could be wrong. But when he talked, it sounded like an officer. It didn't sound like a sergeant major. Because, in my opinion, the sergeant major rank has been basically diluted to being virtually useless nowadays. They're just yes men for the colonel. They don't really give a shit about the men. Some do, I can't say all of them, but for the most part, they don't. They want everyone to fucking be yes men, toe the line, be politically correct, don't make waves, yada yada, even when shit's fucked up beyond, foobarred beyond all recognition. Okay, so now shortly after this, I basically got told by, Charlie Brown, our first sergeant, the worthless fuck that he is, that I was now the sergeant of the guard. So I already told the story about me getting in his face when he was setting me up for failure and he was trying to pencil whip me to death. I think that's 5 or 6 episodes back. I kind of jumped around a little bit, but it had to be said at the time. And who pulled guard for half the compound? One platoon. That was 3rd Platoon. And not only did 3rd Platoon pull guard for half the compound, basically five towers. They did 4 hours on and 6 hours off, and then it later was 4 on, 4 off, which is basically unsustainable. They did guard. They did convoy security between Abu Ghraib and Victory and a couple other of the FOBs in the area, despite not having machine guns that worked, just getting Mark 19s from the 202 and a couple of 50 cals. We had very few qualified gunners on those because shit got fucked up. It took a while to get everyone trained up to speed in country. It didn't happen overnight. And then, they had to also provide people to follow Haji around when he went around the post and cleaned all the porta shitters with his porta shitter truck, which was a great detail. And then the 202 MI, who we were assigned to, they had their own battalion motor pool, and those fuckers wouldn't do anything unless the driver was with the vehicle. So many times, I had to wake an individual up to go stand by a vehicle and then take off tires and do level 1 maintenance before those fucks would even touch the vehicle. Okay, so I had guys literally operating on 2 hours of sleep day in and day out because of all the fucking extra requirements that were being placed upon us. The other platoons were out there getting trained up and doing their fucking deal, getting up to speed on all the tasks and all the ammo that we didn't get a chance to shoot. And 3rd platoon basically got fucked. And I was the sergeant of the guard. I remember, I always tried to unfuck shit, the best I can. And some of the best ways to make something that's really fucked up, a little easier is to turn it into some kind of fucking practical joke or to make fun of it. And that's what I did. And I can recall, it's just some funny stories. When I remember I put these guys in, and we had one guy he was an old second back. He wasn't an old second guy. He was a younger second back guy. He did his 2 or 3 years there, came back down to the guard, worked as an EMT, was going to college, was married, came to our unit, and then got deployed with us to Iraq. Great guy. Not going to say his name, but he was hilarious as hell. He would faint at the sight of his own blood. How that happened, I don't know, but it was hilarious. But I remember he's up in one of the towers, and the guy in the tower with him was Chupacabra, and we had just got a briefing on the new Iraqi police in the area. They told us the uniform that they're wearing and what to expect and blah, 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 and they should never flag the towers and yada, yada, yada. Well, lo and behold, some Iraqi police, they were not in the properly marked vehicle. They were not even wearing the proper uniform. They roll right by the prison. There's a guy standing in the back holding an RPK. Vehicle turns around, comes back. Now that RPK is pointing at the towers. They're being flagged by a machine gun. The second back guy just whips up his M4. The guy's about 150, 200 meters away. Boom. Shoots the dude right through the shoulder. One shot, boom. The guy fucking goes down. I get the call, hey, we got a shooting. Everyone's freaking out. So I got to the tower. Everyone's like, oh my God. And other people were there. It was utter pandemonium. And I'm like, chill. It's not a big deal. We're not stateside. And, people are going to get shot, gentlemen. And, as the sergeant of the guard, I have to basically separate people, find out what's going on. And, one guy told me his fucking, version of events. Then I talked to Chupacabra, and he was pretty much spot on with the same thing that happened. And I said, okay, both your stories are close enough to match. We wrote it all down, turned it in, and then, the battalion commander made a big stink about it. But I had actually got up in the tower, and I took pictures of the vehicle. The vehicle wasn't hit, but it had stopped, and some other Iraqis were giving this guy medical fucking, help. He had a nice clean hole right through his shoulder. It wasn't a big blowout or nothing. We were using, the steel core penetrator rounds. They just rip right through a human being. They really don't do that much damage. And, when the battalion commander big stink about it, I said, hey, you know what, here's the briefing that we got. This is what the vehicles are supposed to look like. Well, this is the vehicle that the guy was on when he got shot. It's not the same as in the picture. So, I don't know how you can hold my guy responsible for that. He was flagged by a machine gun. He did what he was told to do, and that's the way it goes. And I shut that shit down right there on the spot. And got the, and I'm saying, hey, when the Iraqi police, they can all like get on the same fucking sheet of music and all wear the same uniforms and whatever, then this will stop happening. And lo and behold, they got on the same sheet of music. It took like a week and a half, but you know, we didn't really have any more fucking issues with that. Okay, another thing I used to do as a sergeant of the guard is I would basically run chow out to the guys from the chow hall. You know, I'd go by all the towers, they'd tell me what they wanted, I'd tell them what they had in the chow hall, and then I would make a list, and I'd go pick up all the fucking food, and I'd roll it out there, and I'd give it to everyone, along with little cans of Coca-Cola and what have you. And, you know, that worked out pretty good. Now, that worked out really well for, like, I think the first week, and then we had a shift in the wind. Okay, and that shit truck was literally dumping the contents of all of the porta shitters in a pond, which was about, I would say 60 to 80 meters away from one of the towers that was in one of the corners of the prison. And the wind would, you know, when the wind shifted, instead of the wind coming over that tower and then pushing all the stink away from them, into the middle of the prison, the wind was coming from the other way. So all of that wind was literally rolling across this shit pond, going up the corner, and then like literally coming up and going through the tower. So those guys who were in that tower for a 4-hour stint, literally, it smelled like they had their head in a porta shitter for the full 4 fucking hours. And I remember I go over there to Chupacabra, and I'm like, oh, what do you want to eat? And like literally he comes in, he pulls down his bandana, and he's like dry heaving. He's like, I just want a Coca-Cola. And I'm like, all right, anybody else? And he turns around, he goes, we all just want some Coca-Colas. I'm like, all right, Coca-Cola it is. We're on the rapid weight loss, huh? And I had to laugh my ass off because it was hilarious. And I went out, got him some Cokes, and I brought it up to him. And yeah, they didn't like that day. And another thing I used to do, just to make it a little more fun, is when I would put in the guys into the tower in the corner there, when I'm going by the shit pond, I would slow down from right around 20 miles an hour to basically 2 miles an hour. So I would slowly tool by the lovely shit pond and listen to everyone screaming in agony as the stink was overpowering. And I understand that, you know, there were guys who were paying other dudes just so they didn't have to stay in that fucking tower because it stunk so bad. And, you know, some guys, it didn't bother them as much, and I'm sure they made some serious coin. But I thought that was actually a pretty good deal. Okay, now another thing that happened, this is the last bit I'm going to say because we're at 18 minutes. This happened, well, I was maybe on station maybe a week and a half. And I was over at the far side of the prison, which is closest to the apartment buildings, which were just on the other side of the wall. And then around the corner, about another 150, 200 meters, was a mosque. Well, apparently from the overpass, which is about 3 or 4 clicks away from the prison, they had fired a salvo of Kadoosh rockets at the prison. And they didn't show up on the Q-36 radar. That's basically a radar system that they have that detects indirect fire when it comes up and down. They can find out where it's coming from, and then they can send out patrols there, or they can do a counter battery, which they didn't really do that often because they're pussies. But when you're firing, the missiles, which go at a pretty parallel, incline, especially into the prison, because you can actually look into the prison from the overpass. That didn't show up on the Q-36, so they didn't really know the firing point. It took a while to figure it out. They had to do it the old school way, which actually looked at the impact points. You put in a rod, and then you shoot the azimuth back. Then you look at the map, and you can where they intersect is where it came from. So I remember I'm standing there, and one of them comes in, boom, and like immediately within 2 seconds, 3 more of them, boom, boom, and they're walking, in our direction. I'm like, holy fuck! So me and the 2 guys, I just, I just put 2 new guys up in the tower. I'm standing there, and just the angle, the way it looked, one of the missiles, literally, I think it was maybe, I would say 10 yards to the right of the tower. But it missed the tower and went into the apartment building, which was just beyond that, like I think 20 meters beyond that. But from where I'm looking, it looked like pieces were getting blown off of the tower. And I'm like, fuck, I just put those guys in there. Fuck. And I remember I'm going for the hole in the wall, which goes up the tower, and another missile lands, and it was about 25 meters away. It was enough to knock me and the two guys with me on our asses. We got up, our bells are all rung and fucked up because that's a pretty big explosion. And I remember I ran up there, and my guys weren't dead because it didn't hit them. It hit the apartment building, and then I was like, oh, great. We called in the fucking the damage and all the other horse shit, and apparently everything was hunky-dory, and nobody in the prison got hurt. I mean, we got our bells rung. Some people in the apartment building got killed, and this particular type of attack happened like at least half a dozen times while we were there. This was not the first time. It just was the first time it got that close to me. All right, and we're going to cut it off right there. Hopefully you guys enjoy these stories. We're basically in February of '04, Abu Ghraib prison. I'll talk to you guys later.